So I'm going to say good morning to everybody on this day, second day of the learning curve. My goodness, I have to thank Catherine and Marion who helped me on Saturday as I worked through some of the kinks that I was going through here until my brain got really overloaded. And we decided at that point too that we'll just leave the chat part out, and I will work with you when we finish talking about what I wanted to talk about today. I again apologize for somehow the recording not happening for the aura, and it could have been that it did happen and I just misinterpreted how to go to the next step, and because when I went there it said it was blank, so I might have done something in between after the session and before. So we're trusting this week everything will work, because that's a large part, because many people have emailed me there and that they can't make this particular time, but they would like to see it. So we're still working those kinks out. After all, it's only the second week. I wanted to talk about words today because a couple of things that happened to me in the last few months was I had words that I realized I was utilizing that I had emotion around them. And then I did a workshop and we were talking about thoughts and words as part of that workshop. And as I'm looking for topics that I can sort of share now at this point, this was what I came up with as being the second one that we're talking about. First of all, let's talk about thoughts versus words. Thoughts you're having all the time. Thoughts go out, and then as they go out, you can change them. You can change them. I have a technique which I call freeze, evaporate, and replace, which is when I have a thought that does not deal or support with what I'm really wanting or what I really want to think, I will freeze it in space of time. I will evaporate that thought, and then I will replace it with what I want, whether it's an end result or just a different way of looking at something. What I find with this makes life a lot easier, because you can begin to have thoughts that you really are wanting to think. And as we know, thoughts go out and create the reality that we create for it, that comes to us. The other thing about thoughts is the energy we put behind them. And the energy makes the thought repeat more often. So if you have a thought and you have a lot of energy about it, whether it makes you angry or it's like, why is that there? That will actually feed the thought to be repeated more often. And for those of us who were really well educated in the subconscious mind knows how that works. I find younger people don't understand the subconscious mind because it seems to have slipped away from the teachings. But it's very important to understand that everything is housed in the subconscious, and the more energy that it has, the more it will come up and the more often it'll be. So sometimes you may find yourself on a thinking track, which is not really where you want to be. And that is because you're giving it more and more attention. And the more attention you give it, the more often the thought will repeat. So that's why I found the freeze, evaporate, replace technique really helpful. Because not that you can go around watching every single thought you had, but to spend some time every day just watching your thoughts is really, really, really helpful. Now, so thought can be changed very easily, actually, once you get a handle on how that changes. The second thing is, how come we put more impact on words? Because we think so much more than we actually speak. And is because a word has sound, and because it has sound, you cannot take it back. It's gone. It's in the ethers, you may say, forever. It's out there. And so the sound of the word, whatever word it is, as it goes out, is what's going to have an effect. And so when we keep repeating again, like a phrase or a word that comes up, very often, again, we're going to notice how it may trigger us. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple of examples lately that I ran across. Well, one is probably last year this happened. I live in Penticton, and when I travel north to Vernon, it's about a 2-hour journey. On the way to Vernon, just before we get really close, up on the left, there's a hill with the sign Predator Estates. It is a development that's gone in. Well, for a number of years, every time I went up there, and because this is a great example of how we can be reactive without realizing we're reactive. I would go on, and I mean on, I would go on about how could they name something a predator? How could they go on and do that? How could that happen? And I was actually, one day, one of my friends, as we were driving back home, and I started off again on my rant about predator, of course, she knows my work, she turned to me and said, why don't you just do a word chain on that? And I went, oh, right. And I'll explain what a word chain is to you in a moment or two. Anyway, as we're driving, I actually wasn't driving that day. So as we're driving on back towards Penticton, within 5 minutes, I had done my word chain on the word predator because I know how to do them really easily. I have not had one rant or one complaint about that particular sign ever since. Example number one. Example number two. The home that I'm presently living in, when I used to go into the kitchen, I would feel extremely overwhelmed by all the stuff because I was sharing, and I would feel overwhelmed. I'd open the fridge and I'd close the fridge because, again, I would feel overwhelmed. And I began to say, I'm just so overwhelmed. And I would walk in and walk back out. I'd open the fridge, I'd close the fridge. And then I began to find the word overwhelmed coming into my language. And that is why I kind of monitor a lot of what I say. Sometimes, not all the time, believe me. But I began, what am I doing? So a couple of months now, I was driving back from Vancouver to Penticton. And I got thinking about how this word overwhelmed had come into my vocabulary. So, oh, okay, I know I'm driving, so one part of my mind's on the road, and one part of my mind is beginning now to work on how from formula for this word, overwhelmed. By the time, I moved through, did the whole technique. By the time I came home, the word overwhelmed has not touched my lips since till now. I go in the kitchen, I open the fridge, I am not overwhelmed by what is. And that is, again, by changing the structure of the word, how the word looks, how the word reacts, how the word is. And so you can be held hostage in a way through your reactions to a simple word that you may be thinking or even saying. So it's really important, I find, to really notice those words that trigger you. Now I'm going to say one more thing about this, is that the tone of the words that are spoken to you very often are trigger points. Sometimes it may not be the exact word, but it may be the tone. And that's a little bit of a different process. But the key is to recognize that very often words are used with certain tones, especially when they're coming from somebody else. I'm talking about today mostly about words I have had reactions to, words that have reacted to me, not so much words that people have said to me, mainly because I think I took care of most of those many years ago to a large degree. And so when I do run into something like that, it's fairly obvious, so I can do something about it. But it's when you have your own words, because you're emotionally invested or you're emotionally involved, what ends up happening is that you lose kind of context as to where and what it is. I know that I had another example in my head, and it's fine, so that's all right. 2 examples are pretty good as to how to explain how words that you can be thinking or saying, how they have an effect on you in your behaviors and your reactions and things that you do. So how come this is happening? How come we have reactions when it comes to words? Mainly because it's a whole neurological pathway patterning that happens that has emotions. Very often depends on our childhood. Now, the 2 word examples I used, they weren't words that were in my childhood at all. It was just my reactions to them based on my belief system around certain things. But it's very often we have certain words when we are raised, whether they're culturally or whether they're family. You know how families sometimes have their own language, it seems. And people have different reactions to those words from the families. And so it's really important not to be held hostage emotionally based on words. And so that is basically what this is about today, is to have you become aware that, yes, there are words thoughts you can easily replace because they're easily dissolved. Words are not dissolvable because of the sound of them and in the volume of how they are, but they trigger you internally. And it is the trigger internally that you really want to shift and change. So what I'm going to do now is ask for anybody that would like to ask before I teach the actual technique. If there's any other questions right at this moment, you can unmute yourselves. I'm going to put this on where I can see you all, and I can see if you can unmute yourself, then I can see that, and then you can ask a question. If not, I'll carry on. Anybody have a question at this point? Nope. Oh my goodness. Either I'm very well explaining or I'm not. I hope I didn't lose you all there. So I need a person who's willing to give me a word, work with me with a word. Does anybody here got a word that they know upsets them? And you're going to have to unmute yourself for me to hear it. And I need an example to work with. I'm sure somebody has a word. Lorraine, you have a word?
Yes.
Okay.
Negativity.
Negativity. Okay. Now, how this process works is this. What you're going to do is I'm going to ask you a question. It goes like this. When you think negativity, what is the first word that comes up? First word. All I want is the first word. Negativity means?
Frustration.
Frustration means?
Anxiety.
Anxiety means?
Tenseness.
Tenseness means?
Making changes I don't want to do.
Okay. Now, okay, what I want you to be careful of is that you're allowing the next word to come and you're not reaching for it. You know how our minds will sometimes want to reach for something, because there is an eventual stopping here. And I'm just wondering, when we said tenseness, what is that? Tenseness means now is the next phrase that you gave me, because you went from words to a phrase. Was that the natural thing, or did you reach for that?
I think I reached for that.
That's what it felt like. So let's just leave it as tenseness, okay, for a moment.
Okay.
Now, what's the opposite of tenseness?
Relaxed.
And relaxed means?
Enjoyment.
And enjoyment means?
Peacefulness.
And peacefulness means?
Warmth.
Okay. Now, I'm just wondering again, peacefulness was good. Now, you took a breath and then you said warmth. Did your mind say that, or were you just sifting into the warmth?
I just sifted into the warmth because I couldn't think of another word.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a feeling we could go on a whole big line. I don't want a whole big line, but warmth is good. So what we got is we've got two. I'm going to put my hands up a little bit here. You've got two elements here. You've got the row underneath negativity, and you've got the opposite. So what we do, oh boy, something happened here with the sound. And what we happen here then is we're going to pull out from your neurology frustration, anxiety, tenseness, and tenseness. Okay. So I want you to just think of those words. There are only 3 of them there under negativity. I want you to think of pulling them out, like just pulling out a tray and just letting them go out into the air. Can you do that for me, please, Noreen?
Okay.
And now I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to breathe in relaxed enjoyment, peacefulness, warmth, bringing that inside.
Okay.
Take another brief breath when you got that in. Now, what I usually do is kind of give my body a little shake, like kind of mixing up things. And then I want you to just think of the word negativity for me and ask, negativity means what?
Things are better. I don't feel as anxious.
Right.
About the word now.
Yeah. You might want to do that one a couple of times, because in reality, usually what happens, and we'll use another example, usually what'll come through, it'll be more like relaxed or enjoy or whatever.
Okay.
It'll be that new way in. But when you're learning this way, it's a matter of, again, of trusting that, of being, okay, I'm pull that out and replace that with this. And what I found is that, as I said, all of a sudden you begin to have a new concept or a new idea. Plus, negativity can be, do you hear negativity? We don't really see negativity. We feel it or we relate to it. So thank you, Lorraine, for that.
Thank you.
But I'm going to ask you to put yourself on mute, and the next person that would like to work with a word, please. I know Kayla before you wanted to work with one. Kayla, what word do you want to work with?
How about fear?
Fear. Okay. Fear means
Attack.
attack. Okay. Attack means
Powerlessness.
powerlessness means
Gives me back to fear.
okay. It's okay, that happens. Fear means, we go again. Fear means
Immobilizing.
now that's very much like powerlessness. Now, so I'm just asking again, are you creating a word to put in there because you've already said powerlessness, or did it feel like powerlessness again?
I could have been reaching.
I just want to be sure, because very often it's not usually I went fear. Okay, usually we get a long list with that word, not necessarily. Attack and powerlessness, and because immobilized to me sounds like powerlessness.
Okay.
Like a word, but it could, I just want to be sure that it is your word, because we can go then immobilize, I think that was it. Then that means what? Just to
Frozen.
frozen, yeah. Frozen means
Isolated.
isolated means
I'm just alone.
alone. Alone means
Rejection.
rejection. I need you to speak up a little bit because I'm
Okay.
having trouble hearing you.
All right.
Rejection means
Not perfect.
not perfect, right? And not perfect means
Judged.
judged means
Small.
small, and small means
I just get vanishing.
vanishing, and vanishing means
Nothing.
nothing.
Nothingness.
Yeah, and nothing means
Death.
death, and death means
Transformation.
okay. I don't want to, yeah, I know. Well, we're circling into more philosophical. I want to stop at nothing. Is that all right?
Yes.
What is the opposite of nothing?
Lots.
Lots. And lots means
Abundance.
abundance means
Love.
and love means
Completeness.
is which?
Completeness.
Completeness. And completeness means
Peace.
peace. And peace means it's okay to go into blank. It's okay. We don't have to have a word. We got to stop somewhere. That sounds
Okay.
good? So what we want to do, we've got a block here, fear. And that's like attack, powerlessness, fear again, immobilizing, frozen, isolated, alone, rejection, not perfect, judged, small, vanishing, nothing, right?
Yes.
So I want you to collect those kind of, and then, not kind of, but collect those and then pull those out. Just think of pulling out a tray, pulling out the whole thing, throwing up. For me, I use the sun a lot. I throw things into the sun because the heat just evaporates it all. So I just kind of throw them away. Okay.
Yep.
Now, then we're going to take a breath, and inside, underneath fear, we're going to put lots of abundance, love, completeness, and peace. It's a whole different neurological standpoint from it. Just a word. Just a word. So we're going to put that in and you're going to breathe that in. And as you breathe that in, and again, as I say, just kind of give your body time to assimilate the new words of lots, abundance, love, completeness, and peace, and allow that to settle. And then I want you to think of the word fear and tell me what's the first word that comes up now when you think of fear.
It doesn't exist almost.
It doesn't exist. Yeah, it doesn't exist.
It's like it went into the sun. It's
You see,
gone.
it's not that we're not going to feel fear. It's just that it's not going to trigger all this other stuff in here, isolation, alone, and rejection, right? It's just,
Okay.
so it's just, we can then deal and handle with the fear as it comes up.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Great.
I still am looking, but that was really good. I'm looking, there's something I'm looking for because there's a couple of ways when we're writing down things. So if anybody else wants to have a word looked at and or ask a question, please unmute yourself because then I can see that you're ready to talk. No, nobody else. Okay. We might have a short and sweet little meeting today. I have a thought because I still want to keep practicing this because there's quite a few things yet still to work on and to look at. So I'm going to talk about what can happen towards the end. I was hoping to get a practice in that. What you will find when you're writing the words, or I can hold it in my mind as I go down, but if you're writing the words down, which is what I did for years, just wrote the words down, then what happens is that you will come to one or two things. One is you will come to an absolute block. There's no other things on it. Now, I must say, I have done word change when I've gone down like 28 words. I often use this for releasing phrases of words too, but that's a little different pattern. But it comes down to basically nothing. There's just nothing there. So the last word is where you stop. The other way which can happen is that you can go around like a knot. You're going to have 2 or 3 words that repeat themselves. And so then again, you take the very last one, like the last word. Usually if I find it's repeated once, fine. The second time, then I know, okay, we've got what I call a knot. That's a kind of a little loop at the bottom where you're going to go around with 2 or 3 different words. And then you use that. So it's really about allowing the words to come all the way down, and or you then they'll naturally stop, or you're going to find a knot. I'm putting myself back onto main view, and I'm just going to, seeing nobody else wanted to have any more, but I want you to practice this because it's really about creating freedom. And the freedom that you have makes such a big, big difference into your whole life, into your whole world. Because you don't want a word, as I said, ruling you, because it can happen. It's happened to me where someone has said something, often in their innocence, but man, it's triggered myself. And I've had all sorts of emotional reactions over, which don't make, to the other person, it's like, what's going on? This doesn't make sense. And yet it does make sense on everything else. Now, I usually have been planned originally for these around half an hour, and this is about half an hour now, which is good. I would have liked a few more examples, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is I was thinking of next week, next Wednesday, to talk maybe about guilt. A lot of people seem to carry guilt. And I have a few exercises and reasons for that, where that comes from energetically, what that really entails, and what's that really mean. What I would like also, I would like to ask if there's any topics you would like me to touch on or to go over, please let me know. Email me, norma.cowie@gmail.com, let me know. So I can plan of this. I do have some changes happening in my personal life right now. What you can't see is behind me is boxes and things as I'm packing. But I will be in this environment next week. And then after that, hopefully we can still think, because I really would like to begin to do more and more deeper, longer ones of these. I have quite a list of people interested. A lot of them are interested in watching the video recording. So because they can't, because of work or because of something else, they can't be here. So I really want to thank you for joining me again today. I really want to thank you for your input. I really would appreciate. I got emails last week saying that was informative. Those kind of comments are helpful to me because it's really on a brand new journey. I wasn't as nervous this morning as I was last week. Last week I can't remember when my stomach was so upset as last week. I was a little nervous this morning, but we went over on Saturday over a lot of things. So I knew basically what I had to do and how I needed to bring that. So again, thank you so much. And I'll see you next week this time. Thank you. Bye now.